From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people. Whatever your source of stress or strife, for the people is there.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. I am Keith Allen and proudly welcoming you to this edition of For the People. We have something planned today that I think that you'll be most interested in hearing about. Normally, if we weren't telling you about our great loss of Chuck Harder or doing something extra special today, raising some money for a book and DVD, we would be talking about the news, commenting about the news that's most important, that news that you should know about, not watered down, not fake news, but relevant news. Today, I am very proud to announce that we're going to be writing a book, and I've already started, and we're going to be producing a documentary about Chuck Harder's life in talk radio, things you didn't know about Chuck, things you'd want to know about him, but how he contributed to make America a better place. And Chuck revolutionized talk radio, doesn't get the credit that he really deserved. A lot of others trailblazed, and made a name for themselves, and that's great. But Chuck took a lot of heat for what he had accomplished at the Telford Hotel, and ultimately it stripped him of his microphone. That entire story needs to be told intelligently and thoughtfully, and it's going to be a great read, and I've already started writing the book. It's got a title, and it's Talk Radio at the Telford, the untold story of Chuck Harder, the Clintons, the UAW, and the IRS. And I'm going to read a little bit of what I started, but we got a while to go. And what we're going to do today is try to raise some money and some awareness of the project. And the book and the DVD, we're going to raise $10,000. Now, that is a shoestring budget, if I ever heard one. Is it $15,000? $15,000. That's the book and the DVD. That's not how much you're going to pay for it. It's not how much it's going to be sale for. That's how much it's going to cost to do both. To have professionals work with us on a shoestring budget, but good people, solid people, research. We're going to have to make some trips to get some people on camera, trips to White Springs, Florida, to be able to rent out the facility, to be able to do some taping, all those particular things. And an opportunity now for you to get involved with this project at forthepeopleshow.com, where you can make a donation. We put out on Facebook that we were going to do this, and most of you, that you wanted both. So we're going to make it a companion. We're going to make it a book. And Chuck always liked to do that when he would sell books. He would do a DVD combo. So people like combos, and that's what people are mostly asking for. So we're going to do both. Talk Radio at the Telford, the book, and the DVD companion. And it's going to be a documentary. You'll see the Telford Hotel. You'll see Chuck. You'll hear from people that got questions answered from them on talk shows that were pivotal. You'll see great pictures and moments that you've never seen before. And we're getting a lot of cooperation from the family. And we're excited to do this for Chuck because, again, a lot of people have really wondered what in the heck happened to Chuck. He was huge. He was on over 350 radio stations. I understand 120 cable channels, TV stations, rather, across the country. And I was with him for some of that journey beginning in 1995 But Chuck started that journey in 1979 with For the People. He got on to WFLA in the 80s, but it was on 3 other radio stations before that, doing other things besides being a teenage disc jockey in Chicago. But all of that will be told. And Chuck's philosophies, along with Chuckisms in the book. There'll be a section of isms because Chuck had a lot of them. I remember a caller, and Chuck uniquely handled each one of them. But when bill collectors would call, one listener from Nevada said, "Chuck, what do you do when a bill collector just won't leave you alone?" And Chuck, in his way, had said, what I would tell him is you can't get blood out of a turnip. And he goes, well, that's what I'll tell him. And that was just a very simple way of saying, I don't got the money. You can't get blood out of a turnip if you don't have it. And now you can sue him for harassment and all sorts of things like that. But that's another show in itself. But Chuck had just a uncanny ability to not only help people, but make them a friend on the radio and a friend for life. And though Chuck has lost the providence back in the 90s from the amount of stations that he had, the amount of respect and what people learned about government and the inner workings of government, and unfortunately a lot of the corruption, consumer questions, empowerment to get your money back, to save money, to make money. Chuck was able to do that in a real substantive way that helped people meaningfully. And Chuck dedicated his life to those particular things. And I think that this book and DVD would be a great tribute to Chuck and to the future of For the People. And it'll bring you up to date to even when me and Chuck got together in 2015 to relaunch For the People. We'll talk about some of those challenges that we had, some of the conversations that we had. His wife dying of cancer. God bless Diane. Very pivotal in Chuck's life with For the People. She used to be the bookkeeper at Raymond James Stadium many, many years ago, many moons ago, and ran the books more or less, kept everything straight for Chuck for decades, and did it with a smile. Did it with a smile. She was a remarkable lady, and, you know, they say behind every good man is a good woman. Well, Diane was a good lady. She was a good woman, and I've had many wonderful conversations with her before she passed, but she certainly was a driving force for Chuck, for her family that duly misses her, and she just was a wonderful, delightful person, loved her family, loved animals, and that's one thing that Chuck and Diane both had, the love of animals, loved them, and those stories as well. Chuck loved animals. You remember, we called her Woovie, but over the radio, you may remember Peaches. Yeah, Peaches. She was a beautiful dog, and Chuck would bring her into the studio at the Telford Hotel, and she would just sit there, and Chuck would talk about her on the air, and it was sad when Peaches passed. Chuck got on the air and was very emotional about it, but loved that dog. Oh, my goodness gracious. But, you know, they're members of the family. They're irreplaceable. And Chuck had a Great Dane up to his passing. Loved Sonny. That's right. And some of you might remember the Sun Radio Network in Tampa, Florida. Don't know if there was any correlation between the names and choosing of the names. I'm not sure. But I got to tell you, last week and even today, it's just the realization that somebody who was so pivotal, not only in your life, but in my life, has gone forever, at least on this plane. Now, it turns out that Art Bell, good friends with Chuck, passed after Chuck. The correct date was April 10th, and oddly and mysteriously, Art Bell died on Friday the 13th. I know. You couldn't have planned it that well, and it really just was so fitting for what Art did. I listened to the tribute show that Art Bell did for his friend Chuck Harder, and he was choked up. He really cared about Art, and he was able to run with the show and do a remarkable job. Of course, still the host of Coast to Coast AM. Wonderful, wonderful broadcast. But Chuck was guest on both programs, and people still search for that show. I just let today, as a matter of fact, via email, let George Norrie know that Chuck's passed, if he didn't know. And then secondly, that the old chuckharder.com is not available, and if he could change that, because people look for the program but can't find a website or information about Chuck, but it's forthepeopleshow.com. So there's a possibility that I might be able to give an update on his broadcast about Chuck and his passing, etc., and we'll just see. I'm just waiting for an email back from George Norrie from Coast to Coast. I would imagine I would hear back from him. He knew that Chuck was special, was unique, and he definitely did not get the credit for so many different things that he deserved. Chuck spent so much money researching, so much money on publishing items for the consumer that he lost money. He would even say on the air, and people thought, oh, that was a sales ploy. He said, this will actually cost me more than it will cost you. And a lot of times, just to get the information out into the right hands, he would do it. That's just the kind of guy he was. And he took a school teacher's salary. There were others in the organization, the nonprofit organization, For the People, People's Network, that got paid more than he did. Much more than he did to do their jobs. Most people made a modest salary. But some of the higher-uppers, like my father, that was president for a short time, he made more money than Chuck, much more. But he knew what it took to be able to get it going and spent his life savings. Him and his wife got together, and that story is going to be told. And a lot of restoration, a lot of building. And Chuck was a pioneer. He really was. Remember UPI? Yeah, they're still around. Chuck saved them from bankruptcy. Yeah, we'll hear about that story through the eyes of somebody that would know about that during that time, an engineer himself. We'll hear from him and a good friend of Chuck's through the years that lent him so much valuable information. Today, what we're doing is we're raising money, and we'll be doing this until we can reach $15,000, but we asked if you would be willing to contribute. So today, if you'd like to see this to completion, Talk Radio at the Telford, the untold story of Chuck Harder, the Clintons, the UAW, and the IRS. Please go to forthepeopleshow.com. There's a donate button right there. You'll see a caption with the title. How do you like that title, by the way? Talk Radio at the Telford. Can you imagine the jacket cover of that? It's going to be magnificent. And a nice picture of Chuck, but the untold story of Chuck Harder, the Clintons, the UAW, and the IRS. I mean, this could be made into a real movie one day, and it could happen. And that's my wish, that one of the networks would actually pick it up and take the book. And, I'd be involved, obviously, but to make this a reality, because this is something that should have been told a long time ago, but I find it a mission now, and I would love for you to get involved. If you love Chuck and you believe in this right now, whatever you could give right now would be appreciated. Our goal, $15,000, and we will keep you up to date as to our progress. We'll put the information up every single day as the number. We'll have like a meter, and you'll see where it's at, so you can check back. Some of you can maybe only give a couple dollars, and that's okay. Don't feel bad if it's $1 or $2. Some of my supporters, it's just $1 a month. That's all they can give. Some of you might be able to give 100, maybe 1,000, or even more. Whatever it is, it will go towards this endeavor solely. The untold story of Chuck Harder, the Clintons, the UAW, and the IRS. Chuck had a very unique abilities. It wasn't just one thing.